Welcome! You're watching Family Magic UK. Have you been planning your next trip to Disneyland Paris or your first trip to Disneyland Paris and you can't decide whether to go via train or car? Well, let's see if we can help you make that decision because we've actually done both. So this week's episode is Eurostar versus Le Shuttle. So this is our second episode of our Versus series. The first episode, me and Ben talked about our experience staying off-site at a cheaper hotel and on-site in the Disney park. Ultimately, we ended up agreeing that staying on-site is better, despite how expensive it can be. So this week, I thought I would let you guys know our experience traveling via Eurostar and also traveling via the shuttle. Now, if you don't know what the shuttle is, it's a giant train that vehicles from motorbikes to big lorries can get across the channel into France and into Europe. Now, we've used it 3 times and we've only travelled via Eurostar once. Now, before I go into both forms of transport, I need to point out, for those of you who don't know, but as of June this year, unfortunately, there's no longer going to be a direct service from London St Pancras to Disneyland Park via the Eurostar. There was a big announcement made last year. So if you want to travel via Eurostar, you still can, but you will have to do via either Lille or Paris. We travelled direct to Disney from London St Pancras when we went at Christmas time, but coming back, we had to go via Paris. And it was simply because we couldn't get a ticket to come back direct. I'm going to let you know exactly how the experience was. And then I'm going to let you guys know how we get on with travelling via car, because most people, funny enough, are shocked at how often we've done it via car. This is just based on our experience. In no way am I telling you how to travel to Disneyland Paris, but if you are a family with young children and you can't decide what will be best, then maybe hearing our experience might help you make that decision. So let's begin with the Eurostar. Straight away, I just want to point out that the day that we travelled, it could have been one of those days when something goes wrong. It was like a ball that was just constantly rolling and they couldn't stop. But there was a lot of miscommunication and no communication between staff and customers. We travelled by car first. Using a Just Park app, we parked the car at an Asda car park just outside central London. And then we got the tube from there that took us straight to St Pancras. So from the car, we were like a 5-10 minute walk to the tube station. Now, the tube station that we got was Wembley Park, and that took us straight to King's Cross, which you just walk through a little bit and then you're into St Pancras. We were there in plenty of time and we managed to have our breakfast, you know, sitting in the train station where all the shops were. And I think we still had like just under 2 hours until our train was leaving. We'd quickly gone to Boots to get some snacks for the train journey and then joined really long queue. Like, we couldn't believe how long this queue was, and Ben panicked a bit because he thought that it was gonna have an effect on us getting on the train on time. But there was staff with placards with all the trains and the specific train times that they were needing customers to come to them for. And luckily, our train wasn't there on any of their lists, so we assumed that we had plenty of time still. And then all of a sudden they were shouting Disneyland, Disneyland, and they made us come out of the queue and form this completely new queue, which confused all the people that were not in the queue and that were arriving at the train station entrance, or the Eurostar entrance, sorry. This is where the miscommunication really got out of hand, because the staff member that decided to create our queue was being told by another staff member that they didn't need to do that. And then a third staff member had to deal with the customers that were arriving just spontaneously and not knowing that there was a queuing system going on, and it was a bit chaos. So we eventually joined the actual Eurostar queue system, where there's like all these like check-in desks. Like, we could tell there was loads of people panicking and waiting to get on our train as well. And then this lovely man who joined our queue, he was on his own, and he told us that his train to Lille should have left at like 9:20 in the morning, and it was cancelled. I still don't know if he actually got on our train or if he was put on a different train, because our train did stop at Lille. I think that was maybe the cause of the beginning of the chaos. We were in this queue for a good hour, where, you know, it took us just to get to the check-in, where you scan your ticket and you put your bags through the x-ray machine. And they only had, I think, 4 x-ray machines running. So when we got through that part, staff then started letting people know that they were aware that we were still in this queue and the train was not going to leave without us. Now, I think by this point we only had like half an hour until the train was leaving, and we still had to go through the passport control, which we were in the queue for maybe another 15 minutes. Normally, you would get to sit in this big area where everyone's waiting, just like waiting at an airport, and you wait for your time to come up on the screen, you know, and then you go up the lift or the escalator to where the train is. But we didn't get to do that. We literally had to get straight onto the platform. For a typical family, this would have been quite stressful anyway. There was a lot of young kids on our train who were, you know, obviously bored, frustrated, impatient. With Jacob being autistic, queuing is really difficult for him because he doesn't understand why he has to queue. He just wants to sort of run around or, you know, play with the, you know, the elastic barrier things that they use to make a queuing system. Or in our case, you know, when we still had quite a bit to go before we got to even scan our ticket, Jacob just started to lie on the floor, which he, you know, he does that if we're in a shop or like the supermarket because he's bored. You know, that's just his way of saying, I'm bored, I don't want to stand, so I'm gonna lie down. Yeah, it's fine when we're just standing there, but then all of a sudden, you know, it's like we've got to move a little bit and then he's got to get back up. And then obviously like Finlay was constantly, you know, saying how bored he was, why it was taking ages, and, you know, just constantly, if you have young kids, you'll know what I'm talking about. And once we found our seat and everything, and the driver made the announcement that the train would be delayed, I think it was nearly 15 minutes. The train should have left at 10:15 in the morning, and it didn't leave until it was either just before or just gone 5:30. I can't remember. We left the house at 4:30 or 5. We'd been traveling for nearly 6 hours, and luckily, obviously, the boys were fine in the car. But once we parked the car and started doing the tube and then to the train station and all that, they'd been on their feet for, you know, a good 3 hours. So obviously we were relieved to finally get sat down on the train, but already me and Ben, straight away, we were like, I don't think we're going to be doing this again. It was very stressful for us. It wasn't as easy as we thought it would be. So that was going. Coming back, we didn't have a direct train. We had to get a train from Disneyland to a place just outside of Paris, or in Paris. I can't remember what it was called, but it was to get the RER to Gare du Nord. We assumed that we could just get an RER straight from Disney to Gare du Nord, but on the day that we were traveling home, we couldn't. So that alone was like, oh my God, you know, especially when you just want to get home. And knowing that we had these 2 small trains to do, then wait to get on the Eurostar, then do the Eurostar, and then do the drive home. It was like, we were just, you know, we're exhausted. We'd been in the park all day. And as well, trying to explain to Finlay, who's constantly, this is taking ages, you know, I'm bored. You know, it's like, even with a direct train to Disneyland Paris, and especially going home, it was not any quicker than driving. We didn't see the benefit in that sense. It's not as if we got to Disney quicker via the train or home via the train. That alone was kind of like, we don't really need to do this again anytime soon. But I will say this, when we got to Gare du Nord, the Eurostar service on that end, the staff was so nice and it was so much quicker. We actually had 2 passport controls to go through when we were in Paris, whereas when we left London, we only had to do 1. But when we were in Paris, we had to do a French one and a British one. And they were so quick. Yeah, it was just so much faster. And we had to sit in the waiting area for over an hour. So we got plenty of time, we actually got to sit this time before getting on the train. The only thing was there was nothing for the boys to do. If you're traveling with young kids and you're coming back from Disney and you're getting the Eurostar from Paris, there's nothing for children to do. This was quite difficult for Jacob. Apart from when he had things to eat, he was bored climbing things and he found like this window ledge that he could lie on. Me and Ben didn't get to chill or anything like that because we had to keep them entertained. There was just like a little newsagents where you could get magazines and newspapers and snacks, and then there was like a restaurant and a bar and the duty free, which was little, and I couldn't tell you what was there because I didn't bother looking because I didn't have any money left. So obviously once we got finally to London, we then had to do the journey to the car, and it was just like, the constantly moving around and humping the cases was a lot, and we were so tired. And then, we still had the drive to face, and it was like we just wanted to get home. And in the end, the journey home via the car, that had its little disasters as well, because people can't drive on a Friday night. So there was accidents that had happened, and some that we were caught in and some where we'd gotten the tail end. So I think we didn't get home until like 12:30 at night, and then we had Disney on Ice the next day. So we were tired. So our advice would be, if you don't live in London like us, pay that extra and stay the night before. I think if we'd done it that way, it wouldn't have been so stressful, especially coming home. But because we had Disney on Ice, it was kind of taken out of our hands. Now, let's talk about Le Shuttle. The shuttle is in Folkestone. If you're a bit confused, the ferry is not far from it. That's Dover, if I'm right. But with the ferry, from what I know, you have to leave your vehicle and it's an hour and a half. Whereas Le Shuttle, you can stay in your vehicle and it's only 35 minutes. It's so quick. It's fab. Now, like I said earlier, we don't live in London, we live outside of London. So the drive journey in a 1 hour is, about 8 hours. Fortunately, where the tunnel and the ferry is, you can't really avoid the roads around the outside of London, like the M25. There are other roads you can take, but if there's an accident on them as well, what are you going to do? Now, the first time we did the drive, which was back in 2019, had no issues. And you're only on the M25 for a little while, and then you take the junction to cross the toll bridge, you come off that and you're on other roads, and then it takes you to Folkestone. But when we drove in March last year and in October, both times going, there was accidents, plural, on the M25, and we ended up having to go via the M20, which is I think an extra 15-20 minutes. Now luckily there was no incidents on the M20, but there were roadworks. So there were points where we had to slow down to 50. But luckily, because of the time we'd left at like 3:30 in the morning. So and that was to make a 8:20 train. You've got to be there an hour before, and So when you get to Folkestone, you just put in I think they've got like a screen now where you can put in your details. Sometimes someone will come out and they'll have a look at your ticket and like tell you where to go and whatnot. And they've got this building where, there's loads of places to eat. There's a couple of shops and obviously toilets. So we'll quickly dive in there, have another pee, and then we'll head to where you go to passport control. And then it's just like a window thing. So you just pass out your passports, they check them, and then they'll point which road to take to get on the train. You just follow everyone else. There's just this massive door that's open. It's amazing to see. I mean, I just think it's fab that we have this way of traveling. You see like all the lorries on their train, and you just literally drive onto the train, and then they'll like get you to park up as close as they need you to be to the next vehicle, and then you have to switch it off. And then the train journey is 35 minutes. And when you arrive in Calais, you don't need to do anything but drive off the train and follow the rest of the vehicles, and the motorway's there. You don't come out or have to go through passport control again or none of that. And then it's 3 hours, up to 3 hours from Calais to Disneyland Paris, as long as obviously there's no issues. And there's loads of airs on the way there, like on the motorway, and they're like your motorway service station. They're great for like camper vans as well. Like if you have a motorhome or you've got a DIY camper van in that, they've got all the facilities for them, and they've got toilets and cafe and shop, like food and bits. And some of them even have little play park areas. So when it's a nice day in weather, and if you want to get a good break, you could sit there, get a coffee and whatnot. Or if you're like us and you just want to get to Disney, then you just dive in, pee, back in the car, you head straight to the park. And now me and Ben do take turns. I'll do the drive going and he'll drive when we're in France, because he is a much more confident driver and can drive on the opposite side of the road. And it is really 2 roads. Unfortunately, there aren't signs. Now, it was weird because when we went the first time in November 2019, I bought this like guidebook thing. It said clearly that there are signs telling you this way to Disneyland Paris. Trust me, I love looking when Ben's driving, right? And I had to check the signs for him to make sure that we were going the right way. When you come off the train at Calais, you don't see a sign for Disneyland Paris until you're a good 50 kilometers from the park. You'll know the sign because it's the old Euro Disney sign. So it's the Mickey with Sorcerer's Apprentice, and he's pointing, and it says Disneyland Paris, and it'll say how many kilometers. Don't think that you're going to come off and it's going to tell you how to get there easy enough. It's not. But there is only 2 roads that you need to go. And then when you get to where the Disney park is, then it can be a little bit complicated, because the park is within a round circle that's got loads of different junctions and goes off to all these different villages that are around the park. There are signs around that area that do direct you to the park. And you'll see the buses that say Disneyland Paris. If you're a confident driver, there shouldn't be a problem. To summarise for us with the car, for the boys, being able to just sit in the comfort of, the back of the car, having their tablets, having their food, having their blankets, colouring books, it's much better for them. And they're happy. Yeah, I think for me and Ben, it's the stress of not knowing if there's going to be an accident around the London part, like the M25 or the M1 or, any of those roads that we have no choice but to be on in order to get to Folkestone. Once we've passed that part, it's like, we can relax. We've not been stuck in an accident in France, and we've not been stuck in major traffic. There's been roadworks, but the way that they do the roadworks, it doesn't stop the traffic moving on the motorway like it does over here. Okay, so that is our experience using the Eurostar and Le Shuttle. So out of the 2, we'll drive. But what we have chosen to do differently is we are not going to do the journey in a oneer anymore. We've realised that we don't need to do that. So when we go in March, we are going to stay the night before at a travel lodge. We don't have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning the next day. We can get up at 6, I think. We're still going with the same time that we always do, which is a 8:20 shuttle. The travel lodge that we've chosen to stay at is only 20 minutes from Folkestone. we just get in the car and we're just in the car for 4 hours rather than 8 hours. Yeah, but obviously you'll see all of that in our vlogs for that trip, which is only 4.5 weeks away. So it's not long. And we've also booked a hotel coming back. So we're going to be in the park on our last day until 5 o'clock, I think. So we're going to be in the park all day and then do the journey to Calais, cross the channel, and we're going to stay in the same hotel. So I think that will be better for us. Okay, it does add another cost. I think it will be worth it, you know. The first day in particular, you want to enjoy. You don't want to be tired and you don't want to be put in a bad mood because of the travel. I think it'll be much better for us doing it that way. And I think the Eurostar we will do again when the boys are older and, you know, when they can carry their own luggage. Although traveling can still be stressful whether you have kids or not, and no matter how old they are, you know, whether it be you lose luggage or something, an accident's happened or something's caused a delay or it's been cancelled or there's never a choice that's going to be 100% stress-free. No matter how you choose to travel to whatever destination you go, it's going to be slightly stressful. Obviously, the least stressful, the best. I've not heard of other horror stories with using the Eurostar. Been saying that most of the people that I follow on YouTube that go to Disney often don't have children. Let me know in the comments if you're a family and you've traveled by Eurostar and you've had the same experience as us, or if you've done it slightly different and it's actually worked out better. Let us know, because we're not saying that we would never do the Eurostar again. The way we did it didn't work for us, and if there's a different way we could have done it that would have made it better, let us know. Maybe you're still undecided on how you're going to travel to Disneyland Paris, because I've only described 2 ways that you can get there. You can obviously fly or you can do the ferry. But if you were torn between train and car, I hope that this video has helped you make that decision. So have fun planning your trip, whether it be your first trip to Disneyland Paris or your next trip. And if you have any questions about this episode or anything else to do with getting to Disneyland Paris or Disneyland Paris itself, drop them in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe and have a magical day.